Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me after the report is Dr. Mohamed Haleem, the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Doctor.
Always a pleasure to have me.
The pleasure is all mine. Of course, Doctor, we did see the report about the statements made by Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati in New York ahead or before the United Nations General Assembly regarding the aggression of Israel against the Palestinians, against the Lebanese as well over the past year regarding Palestine and over the past months regarding Lebanon as well. But I would like to be getting your comment regarding the attendance of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for the graduation of a new batch, a new class of 2024 for the Police Academy yesterday, and for today the meeting of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the batch 118 from the Military Academy as well. How would you see this momentum over the past couple of days regarding the presidential activities?
Right, very important two major occasions actually in the history of the Egyptians for keeping both safety and security actually of the civilians, of the border lines, of almost all the people living within the Egyptian land. Yesterday, His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi did attend the Police Academy graduation day for the postgraduate students, stressing the importance of the police as a force in defending not only the internal case and the internal front, but in the meantime sharing perhaps the armed forces side by side to safeguard the border lines, as it was indeed during the case of the tripartite aggression on Egypt in 1956. Israel, England and France, both of which would collaborate hand in hand just by way of defending the border lines. And in the meantime, it seems to be quite nowadays within the crucial period that we are passing through, that His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi is stressing the importance of the existence of the sense of security and the eternal peace among the Egyptians, a sort of a case that will be held and will be pushed a bit forward by the recent postgraduate students of yesterday's Police Academy, yes. Class 2024. But in the meantime, one major fundamental fact that he was quite known, Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi, almost in his speeches, the fact that not only the physical strength, not only the bodybuilding actually, not only the physical safeguarding of the internal case of almost all the Egyptians, but actually there is one major fundamental ethical role that should be applied among all the officers, or the recently graduated one indeed, particularly of keeping an eye on the ordinary, simple, rustic individuals of citizens, of trying to help almost all the people in their own affairs rather than aggressing them or stabilizing them or alienating them from the rest of community, who was aware of the fact that they would have in the meantime be very much physically fit, as much as very much keeping an eye on the ordinary human citizens, helping them and aiding them. And this is one fundamental fact that we are quite aware and seeing and witnessing on a daily basis actually in almost the Egyptian streets and all governorates. The fact that the traffic police, would help the elderly and those disabled figures to cross from one platform to another, and in the meantime leaning on and upon, their own shoulders just by way of aiding them and helping them to carry to the extent of carrying some, heavy loads of their own belongings, yes. Actually. A very much humanitarian and very human and humane case that is rarely found in almost the whole world. So this is one particular dimension actually of the police officers, of which the Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi is stressing, so to speak, the didactic elements, the moral elements, the ethical values that should be kept side by side with the physical strengths, in addition to his own, and very much funny note about stopping, and abstaining from, smoking cigarettes,
Yes.
as much as keeping their own weights in the right shape and the right manner and the right decorum, actually, with the view of convincing and helping and aiding almost all the Egyptians as it stands. This as far as the graduation day of the class of 2024 of the police academy that did occur yesterday was very much concerned with. And today's graduation day also, he was very much stressing the same facts.
Yes.
You know, I mean, representing the role of the armed forces of keeping and of safeguarding the borderlines, of keeping their own words, the word of honor, the parole d'honneur, or the word of honor, of keeping the oath, actually, even before the presidential authority among the people and before the people actually defend them in their own moments of crises as much as in their own crucial moments in history, as it was to be during the course of the revolution of the 25th of January in 2011, actually. The only individual sort of entity that was quite standing still, keeping itself as much as straightforward and direct, and keeping, you know, an eye on the Egyptian individual citizen and average people was the armed forces, actually. And side by side with the police officers, both of which are very much in a position actually to safeguard Egypt inside out, both from within and also from without. This is one of the major facts that His Excellency would stress in today's day of graduation of the armed forces, actually. So as a clear testimony to one fundamental fact that Egypt is safe, is very much secure, and from the borderlines, from the east, from the north, from the south, and from the almost all the dimensions, it seems to be quite, it is to be wholly safeguarded, actually, to a greater extent, possessing a sort of very much righteous, straightforward and strong soldiers and officers that would keep their own eye on the individual average citizens, and in the meantime keeping their own oath, that they have had the sort of the pledge that, sorry, that they have had before the presidential authority. One major fundamental factor that almost all the Egyptians would have to be quite aware is their own extreme sense of awareness of the rule of the rumors, of defending themselves against the devastating attacks of rumors actually that would come at times from within and at other times from without. By clarifying the issue and bringing almost the solid facts of the sense of solidarity and extreme sense of unity that His Excellency would stress the Egyptian people to be harping on and on every now and again, just by way of defending themselves from within as much as from without in the meantime.
Yes, Doctor, as we did shed light on what happened over the past 2 days regarding the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the graduation of a new batch of the police academy yesterday and the military academy for yesterday. As for the past week, how would you see the activities of the foreign minister or the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Migration, Badr Abdul Ati, in Washington, in New York, because he had a visit to the United States, attending the sessions of the United Nations General Assembly? How would you see the Egyptian-American relations on every aspect, and of course the statements made ahead of the United Nations General Assembly regarding Israel and Palestine?
Well, I mean, the Egyptian efforts and the presidential tours are not very much restricted to the presidential level, actually, but to the ministerial as well. In the meantime, the fact that during the course of the last couple of months, we have had a large number of presidential tours, either the advent and the arrival of some presidents, you know, I mean, to Al-Tahdiya Palace, I mean, visiting Egypt and meeting His Excellency Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi to discuss on top of almost all the agendas the Palestinian cause. We have had the Serbian visit. We have had, you know, I mean, a large number of visits
Yes.
to be occurring, actually. But on a ministerial level, I think in the meantime that Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi was keen and very much interested of sending Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli to China to attend a certain distinct sort of forum, economic one indeed particularly, and in the meantime followed by the last week's visit and advent of Mr. Badr al-Ati, the Foreign Minister and Foreign Affairs, actually, to the General Assembly, discussing and examining on almost all the topics, the Palestinian cause, representing the case of the Egyptian sense of helping and solidarity for the Palestinian coast, it's quite more than 40 or 50 years. Perhaps Egypt was the first, representing and denoting the fact that Egypt was the first country since the Al-Aqsa flood on the 7th of October the last year. The sort of the struggle that would, reach to 1 full year now. Egypt was the first country actually to start to stretch the helping hand by crossing and delivering the humanitarian aids and the medical aids as well, actually through Karma Abu Salim crossing as much as Rafah crossing to the Palestinians. Had it not been for the fact that the Israeli side at some time and more than one respect would negate the advent and the arrival of almost these, medical aids and all this beverage and food actually to the other Palestinian side. So it never directs the whole cause right from the early start. Egypt's always there, and even when the problem of Philadelphia axis would arrive and would come to the fore, Egypt was tackling the diplomatic rules and very much peaceful ways and means through the aid of which it would negotiate with either with Hamas leaders as much as to the Israeli side. In the meantime, the sort of the thing that Mr. Badr Abdulati was quite aware of, very much charged with a large number of messages, perhaps the first of which was to represent the peacefulness and the sense of the peace of the mind and the sense of the atrocities, the sabotage and demolitions of houses, of people, of elderly, of innocent figures, of newly born babes, as much as to genocidal attempts on the part of the Israeli side to devastate the infrastructure, and did represent, the aggression on the part of Benjamin Netanyahu and his own negation of almost all the peaceful routes that would lead to a very much successful negotiation, and to the extent that carrying in the United Nations a couple of maps representing, so to speak, the cursed one, and the other is the blessing one, representing how, and trying to counterfeit, trying to deceive almost the whole world of very much deceptive intentions and conventions as much as assumptions on his own part of how, the Israeli people are very much innocent, defending themselves, far from being so, despite, the publication of almost all the atrocities and all the genocidal attempts and the act of the sabotage and demolition of houses, of hospitals, of nurses, of schools in the meantime, and of hospitals in the meantime. I think Mr. Badr Abdulati was quite aware of representing one hidden dimension of the reality of the extreme sense of the aggression on the part of the Israeli side, asking every now and again the American administration to put an end for that quagmirish detail and to put an end for the sense of the nightmarish aspect of that sort of invasion, the invasion that didn't stop, by invading Gaza Strip, demolishing the Western Bank, but actually a couple of days, and since 1 week ago, advancing towards Lebanon, devastating the infrastructure of almost all the innocent people in there, to the extent that, a large number of thousands of immigrants are escaping and fleeing every now and again, sometimes to Syria, sometimes to Iraq, sometimes to Western Bank. And in the meantime, a sort of a nightmare that ended with the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, actually.
On Friday, yes.
On last Friday, actually. And in the meantime, around voices of menaces, of threatening voices, of retaliating for his own act of assassination on the part of the Iranian revolutionary guards, as much as on the followers of late Hassan Nasrallah, and in the meantime, I think that this is one major fundamental fact that Mr. President Al-Sisi, since 1 year ago, since day one actually of the attack on Al-Aqsa floods, the 7th of October, that he did represent in more than one respect and more than one individual speech about, the dangers that would besiege the whole area, and the extent of which, that sort of, fire that would be enkindled not only to cover Gaza Strip and Western Bank, but actually the whole of the Mediterranean countries, the Middle East, so to speak. He was notifying and drawing the attention of the Western world from day one for that sort of fundamental fact, which comes true. I mean, nowadays with you, really testify and attest to, the sort of the sort of pronunciation on the part of his own excellency. And in the meantime, there is a certain individual sense of panic that the Iranian fighters and the revolutionary guards that are escaping to Syria now, actually, encroaching and very much recruiting a large number of fighters in there. This is a clear testimony to the fact that, the extent of the fire will be extended to Syria again, not only to Lebanon,
yes,
and perhaps to Iraq. And as such, clearly, clarifying His Excellency's words since 1 year ago that the whole, Middle East might be in danger of being turned into a regional, war. The sort of the thing that is occurring nowadays. Well, not only Lebanon, not only Syria, not only, Gaza Strip as much as the Western Bank, but perhaps, the Egyptian diplomacy is very much keen of the preceding dangers that would surround, the Libyan file, the Somalian file, the Sudanese file, the Eritrean and Djibouti files, as much as the Ethiopian one in the meantime, extending actually to the Red Sea and the Houthi rebels that had been, attacked on and upon by the American vessels and tussles and weaponries a couple of days ago, and until today, they are still stressing and aggressing and practicing act of, attacking the Houthi rebels to a greater extent. So amid almost all these, agendas and all these crises, it seems to be quite that it's by no means that Egypt would never ever escape the sort of, the fate of its own being within a very much crucial area situated facing at the heart of the Mediterranean world, facing the and exposing the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea. And it seems to be quite that, we wouldn't have to be quite able to escape almost all these fatalistic, infatuations of almost all these possibilities of getting into a sort of, a struggle that is being forced upon us actually by our own geographical necessity, by geopolitical existence and geopolitical necessity. In the meantime, almost all these files, are very much examined in details on the part of Mr. Badr Abdelhati, of which the presidential authority is quite aware. And what seems to be quite marvelous, what seems to be quite significant in our own foreign diplomacy, or the presidential level, the fact that we are not very much recruiting our own efforts within one niche, within one dimension. You might find the presidential authority is very much keeping an eye on the problem of the fifth filling of the Renaissance Dam, and only to discuss and to tackle a strategic partnership with the Somalian armed forces.
Yes.
And in the meantime, carrying the Egyptian file to be represented and to be discussed and examined with Djibouti, with Asmara, with Eritrea, with Sudan. A sort of, an fascinating fact of which almost all the people would seem to be quite, unable to follow to a greater extent. But this is the case of what it is. This is the presidential case, actually, of tackling, of examining, of keeping, of safeguarding almost all the files and dimensions at one and the same time. At a master stroke, I would say.
Yes, and Doctor, finally, you've mentioned a number of crises that are in the region nowadays in terms of Libya, Sudan, Lebanon, of course, Palestine, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. How do you see the positions of Egypt regarding all those crises in the region, and more specifically, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Migration, Badr Abdelhati, stated that Egypt is hosting more than 10 million refugees here in Egypt that are not being even treated as refugees. They are being treated as citizens, as nationals for the past decades, to say the least. How do you see the importance of stating those facts and stating that Egypt cannot be shouldering the responsibility of 10 million refugees with all the problems in the Middle East, in the Arab world nowadays?
Quite unlike almost all the other countries that would abide a large number of refugees, the Egyptian case is quite astonishing and quite glaring to a great extent. The fact that, Mr. Badr Ablati was quite aware of the fact that, and was endorsing, that a large number of refugees, the Palestinians, the Libyan, the Syrian, the Iraqi figures, as much as the Sudanese ones, being highly educated within universities, Egyptian universities, as much as getting and enrolled within Egyptian schools, abiding in large, houses and villas, actually, as much as an orderly and a very much, indigenous citizen, Egyptian citizen is. They are leading a sort of a life. They are not leading a sort of life being secured and being isolated within a little tent, exposed to the elements of danger, of natural threats of nature. But in the meantime, very much mixing and mingling with the Egyptian people as much as any other people are Egyptian in here. And in this respect, I think that Mr. Badr Ablati is widely representing to a greater extent to the whole world, particularly to the Western world, that Egypt is the land of safety and security, is the homeland of abiding a large number of nationalities. Despite the large tribulations and the threatening voices and the threats from all dimensions, despite the economic calamities and the, the problematic situation on almost all fields, military, regional, international, economic, financial, the fact remains that it is still, the sort of the land of peace that would abide and give refuge to almost all the refugees finding sanctuary, a peaceful place to stay in and to escape the threats of their own native land, of their native soil, actually. Not only to be secured, as I've much said, but actually for practicing and going, if you now and again, from one place to another with great deal of peace, with security, with safety, practicing the natural activities as much as any sort of ordinary people would and could here in Egypt. And this is one fundamental fact of almost the whole world is quite aware of. For example, you can really find in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Libya, a large number of foreigners that are leading, a life of expatriates, of adventurous figures that are to be very much forced to be able to move from one place to another because of the threats, because of the politics, because of the triggering, because of the act of sabotage, of the genocidal attempts of militias, of the tribes, of the people of the original citizens, the original citizens. Yes. The same thing would hold actually in Iraq as much as in Syria, and to a greater extent in Libya. But Egypt was quite giving a striking example, was very much exemplary, I would say, of being a land of peace, actually, that would abide a large number of nationalities, in addition to the 100 or the 100 million, actually, of the indigenous citizens. Again, we can really find that we have got a large number of agendas that are to be discussed by Mr. Badr Ablati, perhaps on top of which is also the Palestinian cause that we have referred to at the very beginning. And you have got the Libyan case in the meantime, representing in the meantime the importance of the previous visit of Recep Tayyip Erdogan last month, of which he was very much notably able to mix and mingle and discuss and examine a large number of details about the Libyan oil, about the charting of of the Mediterranean area, and of trying to mend the sort of the relation with the militias in there. And I think the Libyan case in the meantime would be solved to a greater extent. 100% of the problematic situation of Libya, of the struggle and the division among the tribes and the militias in there, would come, to a great deal of solving by the sitting and the act of talking and discussing and examining the ability and the potentiality of the Libyans to select their own leader and to be able actually to say their own say about the parliamentary elections. Not only the Libyan case, but in the meantime, perhaps the Eastern Mediterranean file about Cyprus and about Greece, and the sort of relationship that does exist between the Egyptian presidential authority on the one hand and extreme sense of friendliness, of friendship, I would say, between Cyprus and Greece, of recharging the area of the gas, and in the meantime trying to mend the relations and the diplomatic breach that did occur between Turkey on the one hand and between both Greece and Cyprus. Perhaps on top of almost all the agenda is the Horn of Africa, actually, that seems to be quite also in the meantime occupying pride of place, particularly, I mean, when Ethiopia is intending and very much insisting on refilling the Renaissance Dam, I mean, for the fifth time. The fifth filling, I would say. In the meantime, you know, I mean, the discussion and the examination of the situation of the Egyptian existence and the strategic partnership with Somalia, with Dr. Hassan al-Sheikh, which was visiting Egypt during the course of the last months, of practicing some military maneuvers and of defending actually their own borderlines with the view of preventing the Ethiopian side to penetrate within the Somaliland to get into the Red Sea.
Yes, Dr. Mohamed Haleem, the member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
My pleasure, sir.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. However, I will be leaving you with a final report about the statements made by the Foreign Minister of Egypt, Badr Abdulati, regarding the BRICS, and speaking to them and saying that we need more global reform, financial reform in terms of the Egypt and several other countries joining the BRICS. So we'll be having more in the upcoming report. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Now I'll be seeing you next week.